me start by saying where I think the challenge of our society is. And frankly, this society is divided, whether we like it or not. We've made some major gains over the last 20 years. We broke down apartheid. We've created a new society. New opportunities have emerged. We've had growth rates, not exactly at the levels that people would like, but we've had the longest period of growth rate in our history. There's been many positives over the last 20 years. But we've got a single weakness that I think destroys us, and that is inequality. And inequality is not poverty, whatever people say. Poverty is a component of it, but it's not the same. Poverty simply is about people not having enough resources to live their lives. Inequality is the difference between the guys on the bottom and the guys on the top. And that makes difference because young people and all kinds of people, when you have a society where some people are very rich and everybody and many people are poor, then you have a polarized society because people are angry, because people are excluded from a future. And when they're excluded, they get angry, and when they get angry, the society polarizes, and when the society polarizes, you can't get a coherent society. You can't get a peaceful society. You can't get a stable society. And if you don't get a peaceful society or stable society, my future as much as your future is at stake. Our children's future is at stake. You have to worry about violent crime. You have to worry about whether you can put food on the table. You have to worry about education. You have to worry about healthcare. All of those little things that everybody else should be taking for granted, you can't take for granted in a society. And if we're going to heal inequality, that's the core problem of our society, you're going to have education. And you don't have to have education simply for the rich. Education must be available for people across the board, because it is the passport to the inclusive society. So if our future is dependent on an inclusive society, then education is the fundamental passport to that inclusive society. Without it, nothing else happens. Without it, you can't address inequality, and without addressing inequality, you don't address the polarization that divides us. And that's effectively the challenge we have. You'll hear stories about graduates not getting jobs. Now, there's some truth in that. But the data and the research is quite clear. The chances of you not having a job after being a graduate of a university is much smaller than if you were not a graduate. So if you look at unemployment rates, those without matric have the highest unemployment rates. Those with matric have the second biggest unemployment rate. The lowest unemployment rates exist for those who have higher degrees. It doesn't matter what the degree is. And so the data is quite clear. And although there are individuals who have graduated but are not doing the job that they studied for, that's true. But if you're looking at jobs as a whole, the people with a higher level of degrees, particularly those coming from university, have much smaller levels of education, of unemployment. So the question now becomes, what can you study? And this is the amazing thing. I cannot tell you what to study. And I can tell you one thing is for sure. Whatever you study, the likelihood you wouldn't be working in the area that you studied. You know, I studied as a political scientist. I run a university. Right? There's nothing in my political science training that teaches me to run a university. That comes with experience. It comes with understanding. But going through that period of learning at the university, and eventually I did a first degree, an honors, a master's, and a PhD, and I did it in different universities. I did the first degree in Pietermaritzburg, University of KwaZulu-Natal. Then I came to Wits to do honors. Then I went back to KwaZulu-Natal to do masters, and then I went to New York, and I did a master's and a PhD there. But this is the interesting thing. I learned political science, but my biggest learning happened outside the classroom. It's with interacting with people. It's with talking with people. I learned quite a bit in the classroom, But my most important learning happened outside the classroom. I learned to interact with people. I learned to manage people. I learned to have conversations with people. I learned how to have interpersonal relationships. If you want to be a great manager, you need to learn how to mobilize people. The only way you mobilize people is if you learn how to engage people. And the only way you learn to engage people is if you engage them. This is the great thing about a university. You learn in the classroom, but you learn outside the classroom. You learn in the soccer field or in the cricket grounds. You learn in the theater. And when I speak to students, I say, when you come to a university, do everything impossible, absolutely fundamental. Don't simply sit in the classroom. Hang out in the cafeteria. It's important for learning. There's the interaction there. Hang out and play soccer or cricket or tennis or whatever. Go and join the theater. Learn how to dance. It's cool. But more than learning, it's not only cool, you learn to interact. You learn a whole series of skills. And it's those skill sets that will hold you in good stead later on. Now, I have a habit of talking too much, so you must learn to shut me up. So there are two things that I think you could do, and this is why I wanted to end. The first thing is, when you finish school, there are multiple opportunities. There shouldn't be simply the university. The university is important, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But there should be community colleges. There should be vocational learning. We must have a series of options in after high school, so that people can learn, partly in relation to what they want to do, what their passion is, partly in relation to what their aptitudes are. Some people have skill sets, different kind of skill sets. We need to learn what our skill sets are and then work off our skill sets, work off our passion, and find a thing that we want to do. Neither of these options are more important than the other, by the way. Don't be under any illusions. Some of the most highly paid people in our society are plumbers. Why? Because there's a shortage of plumbers in the society. There's a shortage of mechanics. But as much as that's important, there are other things important. And so universities have their place. And the great thing about a university is, I often say this, a university has two functions. First, it creates professionals in whatever discipline. But secondly, it creates citizens. It creates human beings. That's what it's about. If you create professionals but you haven't created citizens, if you create a doctor who doesn't care, you failed. You failed in that act. And that's what it seems to me universities should be about. So let me give you what are the options. You can do amazing things in a university. You can go into humanity, come to Wits. We have one of the best humanities faculties on the continent. You could do sociology, which is learning the science about how people interact with each other. You can learn political science, which is what I did, is learning how institutions in a society, public institutions, happen and how they work. You can learn about psychology, is how do people think. Industrial psychology, about how to mobilize and organize people in industry, to clinical psychology, how people think and what are the angst that they go through and how do you heal them from that process. You can go to engineering, from chemical engineering to civil engineering to software engineering. This is really cool stuff. We have a new course where we take 15 fine arts students and we take 15 software engineers, we bring them together, and we say to them, we'll teach you how to make games. Games? Computer games. How to make games. So over 3 years, we have a course. The fine arts students teach the engineers about aesthetics, because one of the most important things about games is the aesthetics of the game. It's not a cool game if the color is not right, if the background is not right, all of that kind of stuff. So you teach them how to, they teach them. The software engineering teach the fine arts students about the coding and how to do the engineering stuff. We teach games. What I did is, in the third year, they do a project, they make a game. And so I called all the students in and I said, your final year project, I'll give you a prize. But what I want you to do is there's two rules. Firstly, the game I can keep. And secondly, the game must have Wits as the backdrop. So what you have is the main hall, or the chemistry labs, or the residences, but Wits must be the backdrop. So they made 4 games, right? And then what I did is we gave a prize. I took the final game, we changed it into an app. And normally universities give brochures about what you want to study and all that. We give a game, we say, play the game. If you want to understand Wits, play the game, and then you'll come to know what Wits is about. So that's what we teach in the middle of Wits. You go to, we have all of the other stuff. You go to Faculty of Health Sciences, we teach you to be a pharmacist, a dentist, a doctor, a physiotherapist. You go to our business sciences, we'll teach you to be an accountant. We'll teach you to be a lawyer. We'll teach you to be a financial economist. We teach you to be all kinds of things. There's a variety of options that is impossible. Let me tell you this. The fact that you've not made it at the first time does not mean there aren't opportunities. I want to end off with this because it's really an amazing story. We have a competition in this. We have something called Shimolakong. Shimolakong is an innovation hub. It's a place we're putting up at the university. We're just putting it up now, which takes anybody with an idea. You can be from the university. You must be a graduate. You can be somebody who's from another university. You can be somebody who's not been to a university. As long as you have a good idea, we give you 1 year free rental. We give you free space to explore whether you can make something happen from your idea. So we have a competition in this place in Shimolakong around, which is really this thing, a kind of competition on innovation, anything that you've innovated. So there's a guy who's just been shortlisted in this competition. We're doing it now. It's in partnership with the municipality. It's a 5 million rand competition. This is the municipality gives the money. We hold this competition. It's for young people. So there's a guy who applied. He finished matric, but didn't have the cash to go to university. And this is what he did. So what he did is he was into IT. So he got onto Google, got onto YouTube. From YouTube, he went through classes on how to learn to code. He learned from YouTube. So he learned how to do IT through a self-teaching via YouTube. Then he entered a competition and he won a 250,000 prize. He took that money and he bought a 3D printer, right? Which can create something out. Then what he did is he entered this competition and he figured out, he invented something which is now shortlisted. He invented something that in the middle of a fire in a building, the thing pops out. It looks around, goes around the building, and takes a photograph of where the source of the fire is. Then it beams it live to the fire station so that when they enter, they know where to stop the fire.
So they don't shoot out the flame.
That's right, they go to the source. And he does this self-taught. Why does he do fire? Because he's from Diepsloot. And there's a big challenge of fire in Diepsloot. So he learns that, he takes that, he learns the coding, he puts this together. And by the way, this thing survives in the fire, so it doesn't get destroyed.
Fireproof.
It's fireproof, right? He's now created something that can globally change the world. This is a guy who didn't make it to university. The answer, by the way, is not to go to university. Is there's always another opportunity. Now we're bringing him in. We're saying explore. Come to Shimolakong. Explore your ideas. Let's see what we can make happen. That begins to change our world. And for me, this is where I want to end. Are there going to be challenges at university? Yes. Firstly is finance. We're working and talking. Government bursaries are just not enough. We're currently talking to CEOs of banks to see if they can provide loans at low cost for students to come into any higher education. So we're engaging this. There's a big conversation happening. So we're trying to find solutions there. But the answer to this is, so there's going to be a problem of finance. There's going to be a problem, nothing is worth learning if it's easy. Let me tell you this, you're going to struggle. You learn and you overcome this by collectively coming together and trying to teach and helping each other. That's how you learn. But that's the second thing. The third is you're going to have to interact with all kinds of people. Some are nice people, some are not very nice people. There are all kinds of colors, ethnicities, religions. They all come with their own problems. You have to learn to live with each other. Because I will say this, and this is where I want to end. Ultimately, the university is about creating a community.